Hey guys, Scott with Football Scoop back on the Inside Scoop. Very happy today to be joined by Mitch Stewart, new head coach at Murray State. Hey, Coach Stewart, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, listen, we got a couple minutes today. I asked you to come on because I really wanted to explore, and I wanted you to give coaches some insight into first time becoming a head coach. You're with Chris Hatcher for a real long time. I know you guys are good friends. He has the opportunity to come up. He was asked to interview to be the new head coach at Samford. He gets offered the position. Tell me about that day and what happens with you and the athletic director. And, I know you visited with the president of the university, and they wound up offering you the job almost instantly. Tell me about how that played out there at Murray State.
Well, it was a funny story. First of all, I appreciate you having me on. But it was a funny story. I was actually down in Mobile, Alabama, the week that it happened. So Monday and Tuesday, I'm down in Mobile, Alabama, recruiting, and there for 2 days or so, we had kind of lost contact with Coach Hatcher. We had some recruits. We had some midterm guys coming in on Wednesday, and my recruiting coordinator, he was freaking out because we didn't have a whole lot of people, a whole lot of coaches that were going to be back on campus for that visit because he couldn't get anybody on the phone. So I told him, I said, well, look, I'll come back. I was riding around with Gordon Steele, who's now my offensive line coach, and I said, we'll come back for the visit. So on Wednesday, we came back. We had an O-lineman in, a midterm O-lineman in, and we had done some things that day on a visit, and then we took him out to eat. And we were sitting at a restaurant, and it was me, Coach Adams, Steve Adams, the recruit coordinator, Coach Steele, and then Russ Calloway, who's with Coach Hatcher. And we're sitting here eating with the recruit, and everybody's getting up. I'm talking to the recruit, and everybody's getting up from the table. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, boy, this food must be treating these guys bad. All the coaches are getting up, going to the bathroom. And finally, Coach Steele sits down beside me because I had no idea. We had no idea that any of it was going on with Coach Hatcher. So Coach Steele sits down beside me, and he kind of sends me his phone below the table, and there was a Twitter notification, and it said, Chris Hatcher to be the new head coach at Samford and all that. And I was going, man, I missed something. So I grabbed my phone out of my pocket, and he had tried to call me like 5 times, and he had tried to text me, and I guess I didn't feel it in my pocket or something. So then I look at the recruit and I say, hey, you're going to have to excuse me for a second. And I get up and go to the bathroom, and I call Coach Hatcher. And he said, he was kind of laughing. He said, hey, man, you know how this stuff goes. I'm sorry I couldn't tell anybody and all that. He said, look, if you want a chance to be the head coach there, you need to call the athletic director. So this was all a Wednesday night at about 7 o'clock. I call the athletic director about 8:30 when we get done with the visit. I call him 8:30 Wednesday night, talk to him for probably about an hour, just real brief. He kind of already knew. I mean, obviously he knew me, and I knew him real well, and so he said, listen, he said, Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, I'm going to set a meeting up for you and the president. And I said, okay. And I'd never done a head coaching interview, so I said, look, man, you're going to have to excuse my ignorance. Is this a shirt and tie kind of thing, a suit and tie kind of thing, or what? And he kind of laughed. He said, yeah, you need to wear a tie. So at 8 o'clock Thursday morning, I meet with the president and talk with him for roughly probably 2.5 hours because our president's new. He's in his first year here, so that was kind of a good time for me and him to get to talk and get to know one another. And then I had to leave the president's office, and I drove about 5 minutes over to the stadium to meet back with the AD, and we were going to have a team meeting and all of that kind of stuff where Coach Hatcher was going to tell the team what was going on. And by the time I'd gotten back over to the stadium, the president had called the athletic director and said, yeah, man, it's a go if you're good with it, hiring. And so 4 o'clock Thursday afternoon, I was doing a press conference, and it was a done deal. So it was pretty fast.
That is so cool. So, I've had the opportunity to meet Chris Hatcher a couple times, and I think he is as genuine a person as there is, and I see the same thing in you. I'm so excited for you, and I can understand why the president would recognize that as well. So tell me about when you get to call your wife and tell her what's happening. How'd that go down?
Well, when I left the restaurant Wednesday night when I was with that recruit, I left her and I said, "Hey, I'm coming home." I said, "We need to talk." And I've got two little girls. I've got a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old, so they're yelling and screaming in the background and all that. And she says, "Okay, well, just come home. We'll talk when you get home." So went home and told her, and obviously, uh, she kind of went in freak out mode and wanted to know how long this usually takes. And I said, I don't know. I haven't even talked to the athletic director. And then I talked to the athletic director and I get off the phone with him 45 minutes later and I say, "Hey, Ricky, I'm meeting with the president." And then the next morning, I go meet with the president. I call her back at like 10 o'clock in the morning and I say, "Hey, I got the job." And
That's awesome.
she was kind of mad. I tell you, it's a funny story. It happened so fast. She was all mad because I didn't even have time to get a haircut. You're always sitting there and you're going, "Man, the first time I get to interview for a head coaching job, I'm gonna have all these presentations and I'm gonna be able to show the president this and that, and I'm gonna present it to him and all." I didn't have anything. I mean, I went in there just like me and you were talking, and didn't even have time to cut my hair because not 48 hours before I got the job, I was in Mobile, Alabama recruiting, and she was giving me a hard time about that.
But Mitch, I tell guys all the time. I say, people say, "What do I need when I go in an interview?" I say every interview is different, but what you need most importantly is yourself. You got to go in there and you got to be you, and that's what you sold. I mean, you just went in there as yourself and said, "I've never done it before, but you know, here's what I would do. This would be my plan, I presume." And obviously, they liked what they heard.
Well, the thing, and I tell, this is kind of what I do when I was a coordinator and I would have to hire a position coach, or like some of my position coaches would come to me and say, "Hey, listen, I'm looking at this job. Will you interview me? Can you look at my presentation? I've got a PowerPoint." And I would tell guys all the time, and when I would interview guys and they would come in and they would start to open their computer and all of that, I would kind of tell them, "Hey, look, I don't need all of that." And I would tell them, "Look, don't get married to your PowerPoint presentation, because what happens is if you're too married to that PowerPoint presentation, then all you're going to be doing is reading information. I don't want to see how well you read. I want to know what you actually know." So I think that kind of helps, and maybe that's, maybe I don't know, maybe that helped me with the president, but I know that's what I always look for when hiring assistants. Um, Even when, as a head coach, and even when I was a coordinator, was I wanted to see guys who could come in and talk ball and had their own thoughts, had their own way of doing things, and didn't need to read it off a PowerPoint presentation, because I didn't really know. You never know where that information is coming from. So I've always told some of my coaches when we get in those situations, "Hey, steer clear of that. If they want to see a presentation, that's great, but don't let that be your crutch."
I had the opportunity to visit with 3 different agents this weekend, coaches' agents. And I heard it from them, and it's the same thing I advise coaches, is you've got to be competent as a coach. You got to know what you're talking about, but far more important, when you have the opportunity to sell yourself and get the job, you have to be likable. The other coach has to relate to you. He has to, the other coach, the guy sitting on the other side of the table, has to say, "That's a guy I want in my staff room. He's going to relate well with the players and the rest of the staff." It comes down to, is he a good fit for the staff more often than, does he know X's and O's, and can he teach scheme?
Absolutely, especially at the assistance level. When you're talking about a position coach,
Yep.
because a lot of times those guys, the information part of it is really and truly just going to be regurgitated from that coordinator. You're going to sit in. It's like my defensive guys. I had to hire a whole new defensive staff pretty much, and ever since they've got here, all they've done is sit down with the defensive coordinator, who's Chris Boone, and Boone's just gone through and said, "Look, this is the way I want the drills taught. This is the technique I want taught." So really and truly, when it becomes, or when you're dealing with position coaches, that's more so what you are looking for is this guy a good fit on staff? Is he a hard worker? Those type things. As far as the ball is concerned, he's going to get taught that anyway by the coordinator.
I think Chris Boone is a great hire. I know, a lot of guys tried to hire Chris. I think it's a great hire for you guys. Tell me about, the interrelation of him leaving Sanford, where Hatch was going, him coming here. that, and tell me about the arm wrestle you guys did over Steve-O. You know, I know everybody wanted Steve-O, but you got to keep him. How'd that work out?
Well, with Chris, he had actually I had actually talked to him a little bit at the Alabama High School State Championship games, because at the time Pat Sullivan had announced his retirement. So they really didn't know what was going on down. You know, they didn't know if they were going to be retained, how any of that was going to work. So I ran into Chris at the Alabama High School State Championship games, and he told me, he said, "Hey, listen, you know, I know that y'all's defensive coordinator position is open up there at Murray. Can you get me in touch with Hatcher?" So him and I spoke for probably 2 hours at that game, which I had already known Chris, you know, because Chris, he's an OVC guy. When I first got into the league back in 2010, he was at UT Martin. He was the coordinator at Martin, and then was the coordinator at Jacksonville State. So, you know, his resume I had already seen on the field. But I got a chance to talk to him at those state championship games, and then Hatcher got the job at Samford. So I kind of backed off of it a little bit, while he was getting the job and while I was getting the job. And then I called Hatcher and I said, "Hey, you know, Boone was interested in this job before. If you don't mind, I'm going to call him and see if he would still be interested in it." So, and obviously Hatcher was good with it, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, so I went down during Christmas, and me and Boone met at a Cracker Barrel for like 2 hours or something. I had 9 cups of coffee. I had to go to the bathroom so bad by the end of it. I couldn't get him to quit talking. But we sat there and was able to get the deal done over Christmas. And then Coach Adams, you know, he's the do-all around here, man. You want to talk about a guy? I'll tell you this. When I got the job, we had a kid on campus, a midterm recruit on campus, and we had 4 more that were coming that weekend, and we signed all 5.
That's awesome.
And I assure you, I was doing a press conference. I would run over and go walk around campus with him for 20 minutes, and I'd come back to another press conference and then go eat with him. He handled it all. You know, so he was one that as soon as I got the job, he was the first guy I walked in his office and I said, "Hey, man, whatever I need to do, I need to keep you here." And he just got engaged, and his fiance got a job here teaching in Murray. So, you know, they were really, really comfortable here, and he just loves this place. So I was able to keep him. But as you well know, you met him before, that was probably one of the biggest hires that I made.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know Coach Adams, who's affectionately known as Steve-O, he's a do-it-all, jack of all trades, helps out with everything, helps run operations, recruiting. I know he's a key guy there. I'm glad you got to hang on to him.
Yeah, me too. Me
all
too.
Right. So look at your staff. Your staff is really young, you know, 20s, 30s, maybe one guy over 40. You know, tell me how that plays into your philosophy as a head coach.
Well, my big thing is I don't want there to be a huge divide in the culture, or you know, in what these kids are going through. You know, I tell our kids all the time, and I tell recruits' parents all the time, I'm not that far removed from what I'm asking these kids to do. I have a little bit more knowledge on what's going on, the social media world, you know, the gaming world, and all of that kind of stuff. Do I get into it? Do I play games myself? No, but I kind of know that side of it, and I know a little bit of what these kids do on a day-to-day basis. You know, and I made a joke when I first took the job. You know, the big thing that my big selling point with these kids is, look, when I went to school, I did not walk uphill both ways in the snow. You know, I rode a bus, and I rode the same bus that these kids rode. And when it was cold, we turned the heat on, and when it was hot, we turned the air conditioner on. I do not think that makes me any tougher or any softer as a coach. It's just, you know, there's not that big a difference between what these kids are used to and what I was used to growing up and when I played. And that's how I coach. Some of the things that I didn't like as a player, I'm not going to do as a head coach, because I always thought that those were just kind of things that were always done. You know, it's just the way it always was, and I wanted to get away from all of the way it always is type things. So I think having a staff, I wanted young and energetic. I wanted guys that when they hit the field running. When we told our kids to hustle, those kids could look at our coaches and see our coaches hustling. And obviously you got to have guys who could put you in the right situation schematically. But at the same time, I wanted guys who could get those kids motivated to know their assignment and then go play hard as heck to do that assignment.
So, Mitch, you mentioned social media. Um, in speaking with a couple agents this weekend, I asked them the question, what do you recommend about social media? And they largely said the same thing that we've been talking about: be yourself. I see you on Twitter every now and then, and what I like about what you're doing is you're just being yourself. There's pictures of your wife and your kids celebrating with the guys, talking about the signing class. It's who you are. It's like this conversation. How do you use Twitter? What comes to mind when you think of Twitter? For Coach Mitch Stewart.
I think it's just for me, it's just a communication tool. That's all it is. It's part recruiting. And I think a lot of recruiting that's the reason why I put pictures of my wife and my kids, so on and so forth, because that's a huge part of recruiting. That's a huge part of sports in general. Is those kids feeling comfortable with who their coaches are, and parents feeling comfortable with who those coaches are. And I think it's a key thing for our kids here on campus. I want those guys to see all of our coaches with their families. I want families up here. I want the kids around because that's part of what we're doing. We're creating men, and I think we're helping to create men. And I think that's a huge thing, is teaching them how to act around women, how to act around kids, how to discipline kids, so on and so forth. So, I think social media just helps you tie all that in, because it gives you a platform to take some pictures and show your players on the team and show some of the prospects that you're talking to, hey, this Saturday I'm not doing football. I'm doing this with my family. I'm doing this. I'm hanging out with my kids. There's other things that are important to me other than just football. And that's the way that I use it, and that's the way that our staff uses it. It's a platform for us to put our personal lives and our professional lives out there for our recruits and our players and everybody to see.
So, Mitch, as I travel the country and when I visit, particularly with younger staffs, I often see coaches' wives, coaches' kids. They're at practice sometimes having a meal after practice with the players. You plan to have coaches' families involved, with the team?
Yep, we do we did a deal last fall, and I'm going to do it year round this year. It was Wednesday nights, and it started out as a way that we could make sure all of our kids are eating at least one meal. We wanted to watch our kids eat a meal over at the dining hall, and we did it on Wednesday nights during the season. We're going to do that this fall, and then we're actually going to do it year round. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn that into family night, so that all of the coaches' wives and kids, along with our players, for one night a week, we just go over there on Wednesday night and we can hang out, eat with the kids. Coaches' kids can run around and interact with the players, and things of that nature. Because, I'll tell you this, and my wife, she gets so mad at me sometimes, because when I was a coordinator and all I was dealing with was the offensive guys, that was really the only people my wife knew were the offensive guys. Yeah. She knew who the quarterbacks were because they would come over to the house and eat. She could tell you a couple of the wideouts, and a couple of the O-linemen and all that kind of stuff. So she wants, she's always peppering me about doing something to where they can get up there. She can meet some of those defensive kids and the whole team. She wants to know them all and what they do. So I thought that was just a good way to do that.
All right. Let's shift gears a little bit, going back to Twitter. So very important news yesterday in the coaching world. Steve Spurrier is now on Twitter. Give me some advice for Steve Spurrier on Twitter.
Just like you said, be yourself. That's what everybody wants to see Steve Spurrier do, is just be Steve Spurrier. And I assure you, I'm following him, because I just want to see what type of stuff he comes up with. I hope it's not one of those deals where it has his name on it, but somebody else is doing the tweets. I hope it's actually coming from him, because I would imagine it'll be pretty entertaining.
All right, so I'm thinking about you and Chris Hatcher. You guys pretty much been together last 15 years or so of your lives. Give me a Hatch imitation. You got anything on that front?
I did one the other day at the OVC coaches meeting. We were in there kind of joking around. It was lunchtime, and somebody was talking about their kids playing t-ball or whatever, and they said, yeah, I just hang out in the outfield. I don't get around all the rest of the parents. I don't want to yell at the referees and all that. And I said, yeah. I said, that's what Coach Hatcher used to tell me all the time, is when he would go see Ty play, his son, play baseball, he would hang out in the outfield. And I said, and one day I finally realized why. It was because all of our players were the ones refereeing. And I said, so the next day he'd come out to the players and go, I mean, gee, Manise. And as soon as I did the old G Manise, everybody started laughing. They said, man, you've been around him way too long.
That's beautiful. Love it. Hey, do you guys have any plans this summer to visit with any other staffs?
Yeah, we're going to try to we're going to be careful about it because what I don't want to do is you got to be careful. If you meet too many people and you have too many ideas, you come back and your head's just scrambled eggs, and you got so much good stuff. It's always important to kind of sit back a little bit and say, okay, what works best for us? What do we need to improve on? There's a couple of things that we heard and talked to other people about. But I always like to, one that's just really close, and I always like to go down. I like to go visit the guys at Middle Tennessee. Buster Faulkner, the coordinator down there. Yeah. He was my college roommate and just a lifelong friend for me. But he's always one that I'll go down and just kind of, bang some ideas out with him. But we've got a couple of places on the docket just to go spark some ideas, but we're not going to get too carried away with it.
Gotcha. All right, last question. I'll let you run. Since being named head coach, have you had a chance, you and your wife, to get away at all, or do you guys have any fun plans for the summer? Y'all going to do anything, outside of football?
No, we haven't had a chance to get away yet. We always do something during the summer. We'll always do some type of, week-long vacation. My daughter's birthday, my 3-year-old's birthday, is actually July 4th. So usually we do something the week of July 4th. All of my players, we give them off, so nobody's here at the university or anything like that. So usually for a week during the year, I can turn the phone off and just kind of go have fun. Don't have any plans yet. She's on me. She's getting on me about it. But I'm trying to get all the schedules made for spring ball right now, and then I'll have to worry about what we're going to do in July as a family a little bit after that. But we'll do something for July 4th.
All right, take care of that. Don't mess up the home life.
And, I know it.
Mitch, I appreciate you joining us. This was a lot of fun. I know you guys are going to have a great spring ball, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do on the field in the fall.
Man, I appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
All right. Guys, that's Mitch Stewart. He's an incredibly impressive young coach. I think Mitch, I didn't get a chance to ask him. I think he's young 30s, former college quarterback, clearly relates to the players. And all the coaches. He's a fun guy to be around. He comes straight from that Chris Hatcher mold. I think Murray State did a great service to the university hiring him right away. I think it was the right move, and I'm excited to see what they do in the fall. Thanks for joining us.